everyone. Welcome back. This is day 2 of the show 2019. I'm your host, Emiko, and I'm sitting here today with Brad Lunde of Trans Audio Group and Lone Mountain Audio. Brad, thanks for being here. Hi.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Well, we're very excited because we met through, I just want to tell our viewers how we met, which was through the pro audio music creation side.
Right.
Brad was a panelist at our Capitol Studios event called X Marks the Spot. So let's talk about this because Trans Audio Group and Lone Mountain represent similar interests to a group of music lovers, but they're actually in different factions of the industry. One is pro audio and one is hi-fi. How do you feel that they're separated and where do you feel they meet?
Well, it's interesting. They both share a lot of the same needs where they're trying to understand how to work with a medium that is imperfect, right? Where there's a lot of exploration and opinion and ideas about how you get from point A to B. In pro, the people are sort of approach it from a problem-solving position, meaning they're trying to record something, they're trying to figure out how to get the sound that's in that room onto their recording medium exactly as it is in that room, or exactly as the producer, artist, engineer hears it. So it can be both. Right. It isn't always pure realism. Sometimes it's art, and they want it to be different than it actually is in that room. And so what is not always clear to the audiophile community is that the engineer and the people who are making the record are really there to execute the artist's vision, which may or may not be what the listener wants.
So that's I want to interject here because that's a very, very paramount point that you're making. We interviewed Bruce Robb, who was the founder of Cherokee the legendary Cherokee Studios, and he had said something similar, which was when a producer or artist is in listening to pro audio speakers, it's to hear the best replication or duplication of their own production, their vision, their song. But he said, then you go to hi-fi or high-end audio, and it's the listener is the artist in that sense. So a lot of high-end audio systems may enhance things that were not meant to be enhanced, leaving room for interpretation of what the truth of that song might be. Have you found that to be true in your customer base as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny, I walk around the HiFi shows and I hear records that I sold the gear or I was in the room or I heard it in the studio when it was being recorded. I know what it sounds like.
So you sold the studio gear?
Right.
Right, okay,
and
gotcha.
So I was involved in the making of that record, and I walk around and I hear it played back in other rooms, and it's just like, wow, that is nothing
totally different
like what it sounded like when we recorded it. But at the same time, that's where the hobby comes in, I think, and that's where the fun of it comes in. Now, it's interesting enough, I've spent my life in pro, but I started out in hi-fi, and I think both things were born from super intense love of music. Realism can be carried forth through a lot of different interpretations. So there's a couple of different issues with hi-fi that I think are worth mentioning. There's sort of tone, and then there's sort of distortion, where you can have something have an alternate tone, be warmer, brighter, darker. If it's low distortion and it has a good soundstage, it can still sound really, really impressive, right? Because it's sort of the same thing in pro audio. You can have a room that sounds bright or dark, and you can go in there and play a drum set, and that drum set in that room sounds brighter, darker, bigger, smaller. And so there's very much the same kind of attention to detail where you're listening for what do you want it to sound like on the recording side. And on the playback side, quite often people who have enough money to play in this game say, what do I want it to sound like? When I talk to people who make these records, they want you, they usually say two things. One is they want to share with you their vision. That's one. And the second thing is they want you to enjoy it, right? Because it's such a in a way, it's such a mission of personal passion, right? And when you're trying to put yourself out there like that through a recording, the gear is the sort of the brushes and the canvas and all that of creating the tool. Yeah. So you're buying these certain things to get a certain sound, and then on the playback side, you're hoping people will get to hear it exactly as it is.
So as someone that's on both sides, and you have quite a setup in your room, which we'll get to in a minute. Do you have customers, knowing that you're on both sides, pro and hi-fi, do you have clients come in and say, hey, Brad, what did this record, I want, this is the type of music I like, you're familiar with this, I want to make it sound like it did in the studio? Or do you have people come and say, you know what, I don't care about that, I just want it to sound the way I want it to sound? Like, what's most of your customer base?
I mean,
like?
Because we import ATC and
Right.
and our brand is really oriented around low distortion, I get more of the people that want to hear it exactly the way it is.
That's awesome.
I get people that say on both sides. On the pro side, the people that are making these records buy ATC because they can hear every detail, every flaw, because the goal for them is to get rid of every flaw, hear every flaw. If you can't hear it, you can't get rid of it. And of course, if the kiss of death for a recording engineer is to finish a record, think you have it done, hand it off to the next step, and they call you up and say, there's a problem here,
Right,
here.
go back.
And back it comes to you, and then everybody knows that you messed up.
Right.
And
it's the scarlet letter, I think, in a lot of ways,
it's
isn't
a very
it?
competitive world, and that is not a happy place. So if you can get yourself in a situation where the speaker can reveal everything to you that's wrong,
Right.
so that when you pass it off, nobody calls you, well, that's
Job well done at that point, right?
where you want to be. So we do a lot of business with people that are in that category.
So let's talk about ATC and let's talk about what's in your room here. What are you showing in the room? Because I was in there yesterday. It sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. So clean. I like to equate sound with shapes. It made me feel round, enclosed, enveloped, but not constricted, like in a wonderful bubble, right? But I noticed one thing is that your room has a modest size setup, in as much as I think size and looks are deceiving because it really packs a punch. But they're not huge floor-to-ceiling speakers. Tell us about what's in the room right now.
Well, I kind of look at it as maybe what the stereo system of the next 10 years is going to look like, where the speakers we have in there are active, which are different than what some people call powered.
Right.
Active means you have a driver and an amplifier linked together. So the amp driver is one package. So there's 3 amps in each speaker, and those are specific to a driver, and they're all controlled on board by a crossover. So we don't have a passive crossover involved anywhere, which is, to our scientific sort of mind, a lot of loss, and you can't control it, and it has a lot of weaknesses that can be overcome. So we use electronic crossovers, and then we have just a simple preamp DAC. So literally, we have a computer source, a preamp DAC with a CD player in it, and a pair of speakers. That's it. That's the entire system.
For more interviews, behind the scenes, seminars, concerts, and crazy adventure antics, stay with us. Hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching this on. Turn your notifications on. Check us out at thehomeentertainmentshow.com. I'm your host, Amy Jo. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.